Remake Rewind.
Hey guys, welcome to Remake Rewind Redux, the show where we talk
It's
about...
Redo.
This is Redo? I thought it was Redux.
I spelled it like the movies, but it's Redo.
Oh, well, Remake Rewind Redo, guys. So this is the show where we talk about whether or not movies should have been remade. This one we're doing a little bit differently. Obviously, I am not Michael. Michael, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Mike. I'm the voice of MDXpods, and we're now celebrating our 2-year anniversary of Remake Rewind, and we thought we would do things a little bit different. Longtime listeners will know that we have had a few hosts come and go, and so there's some episodes that we've covered that Double D and Alex didn't get to do. So Double D came into the podcast about 6-7 months into it. I think he came in on like episode 17. Alex came in at like a year and a half into it, so he missed a lot of episodes. I think he came in at episode 34, 35. So there are topics that we wanted to that they wanted to cover, but we had already done it. So for our 2-year anniversary, instead of doing a clip show, we are doing episodes that we've already done, but from a new perspective. Both Double D and Alex have picked episodes that we've already covered that they were not part of. And just because I want to do a little less work, I'm making them be the main host of the episode that they pick. So today, it's Double D.
Yes, which is a welcome change because Mike sucks.
Yep. And another thing is, it's an anniversary special. We got to have some guests. So we've got one of our great friends from Get to the Podcast, Neal Carson. How you doing, Neal?
I'm doing great, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Congratulations on the anniversary.
Yeah, welcome
Hey,
welcome
thank
aboard,
you, thank
man.
you.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited
I'm
to
gonna
be
have to say
here.
congratulations to you guys too, because you guys started the same week as we did. So
Yeah,
tell the
thanks,
boys to
thanks.
get to the podcast.
I can't believe
Congrats on 2 years.
we're both still here.
Right. It's been a long time coming. We've had Nick on the show twice. Diego's been on the show, and we were just trying to find the right episode for you. So we're glad that you finally got on there. Because I've been on your guys' show, twice?
Yeah, it's been great.
So, Neal, for those of our listeners who don't know who you are, can you give us just like a quick rundown on what your podcast is?
Yeah, I mean, it's just me, Nick Gambino, Diego D'Souza, and we just we kind of, we're big movie fans, so we just like to discuss different different angles of breaking down movies and our opinions on different genres and upcoming news. We generally don't really get to the news too much, but like to look back on films that we love.
You
and
have
our
some
childhood and all
news
that.
episodes.
Yeah, we do. We do take up some. If it's something crazy, then we'll dive in. But we just love talking about movies and anything and everything
bashing
having
Marvel.
to do with movies. And we try to get Diego to go to the theater more often. That's something
Right.
we try to do a lot.
So, obviously, I've talked about this podcast a lot. Get to the Podcast. They're great guys. Pretty much within the first week or two of our podcast going, Nick and I connected on Twitter, and we've kind of been friends ever since. We share each other's content. We've all popped on each other's shows. I don't think Neal did the description of his podcast justice. That show is great. Neal, Nick, and Diego all bring something to the table. They all do definitely show a great passion for movies in general. Even if Neal pisses me off almost every week with him bashing Marvel for no goddamn reason.
Thank
You
you.
talk about Pride and Prejudice, and then Marvel comes up for no reason. I think on the last podcast, I pegged it at like 1 minute and 30 seconds before you started bringing up Marvel for no reason. So,
in the back of my
the
mind,
show...
it's always eating at me. There's always some like Marvel news that comes out, and I'm like, oh, Marvel.
Right.
I don't know why.
But, despite
I can't
that,
even explain it.
Despite that, it's a great podcast. I thoroughly enjoy listening to it every week. And all of our listeners, you guys should check it out. I will have links to Get to the Podcast, all their contact info in the description below the podcast on YouTube. So check them out. And I'm going to turn the show back over to Double D.
Well, Mike, like you said, we're doing a show we did before, not one that I was a part of, but I chose this one because this movie is near and dear to my heart. One of my old time favorites. Alex, why don't you tell them what we did?
We did Judge Dredd and Dredd.
Yes, I am the law.
I am the law.
I am the law.
the first time we aired this episode or talked about it, I started out the episode with like a montage of just him saying "I am the law" and just like weird quotes, and then the part where Armand Asante is like "the law."
Yeah. You know what, Mike? Why don't you do a synopsis for Judge Dredd?
What?
Just do a synopsis. I usually do.
Oh.
You do it now.
Oh, yeah.
Switch
No,
roles
I
here.
got it. I got one.
All right.
All right, so this synopsis is written by Kathy Lee. In a dystopic future where urban areas have grown into megacities that cover entire coastal regions, the justice system has evolved to a single person invested with the power of police, judge, jury, and executioner. The judge. Among the judges of Megacity 1, Judge Joseph Dredd is one of the best, and a particular favorite of the head of the council, Chief Justice Fargo. But there are evil forces at work in the Justice Department. Block riots and the escape of Rico, a homicidal maniac, are only steps in a plan that ultimately lead to the sentencing of Dredd for a murder he did not commit. And Dredd must discover the secrets of his own past and survive to stop the evil doers.
Yeah. Yeah. Never do that again. I'll stick to doing those.
It's like,
but yeah, that
good
sounds
first
about
try,
right.
Mike.
That's Judge Dredd. But yeah, this is a great movie where Sylvester Stallone is Judge Dredd. Everyone's afraid of Sylvester Stallone in real life, so he was a perfect fit for this role. And
Is anybody actually afraid of him?
I would be if you talked to me like he was talking like Dredd.
I mean, First Blood, Rocky, yeah, I'd be afraid.
Even in this movie, he was already
Demolition
starting
Man.
to look a little geriatric.
With the contacts in there and everything. That was
Oh yeah, those
beautiful.
blue eyes.
This is very
Oh,
yeah,
man.
just stare
Oh,
into
baby
him.
blues.
Bad
He's
at all.
like
Get lost.
an Italian Paul Newman.
You know, Sylvester Stallone had never heard of Judge Dredd, the comic book, until he was offered this role.
That seems very obvious.
Yeah. But he pretty much took over the movie. Danny Cannon, the director, he after this movie, he swore he would never work again with another big name actor because he basically stole the movie from him.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think you would know that about Stallone before working with him because he has traditionally done that. Obviously he wrote Rocky on his own, but before he did Rock, or even after Rocky, every movie he's ever done, he's kind of taken over and rewritten and punched up to make it more Stallone-y.
I think
That's
he
what
did
he
that
is,
with,
like, he's a
First
writer.
Blood, yeah.
Yeah, he did that with First Blood. He did it with Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
It's
He did
almost
it
as
with,
if Sylvester
Tango
Stallone was
and
like,
Cash.
you know what? Fuck this. I'm just gonna start directing.
You know what? You're nobody.
He's
I'm
been
going to
directing
run
for
this
a while.
show.
I think he directed Rocky 3 or Rocky 4, and he also directed Saturday Night Fever. He directed he's been directing almost as long as he's been acting and writing. So that doesn't surprise me, but big actors like him, Will Smith, Tom Cruise, Adam Sandler, whenever they get scripts for a movie, they have their team go through and rewrite it to make it, a Stallone vehicle. I almost said vesicle. A Stallone vehicle.
No,
Stallone vesicle.
Stallone vesicle is the correct one.
Right? But yeah, it surprises me that he wouldn't know that because literally every movie that Stallone has ever done, he has rewritten the script. Like every movie.
Well, this is the only one I'm glad about. I really enjoy this movie, guys. I've been watching this movie since I was a child. It came out in 1995 when I was 6 years old,
Oh.
and I didn't watch it in the theaters because obviously it was rated R. But I had this movie on VHS and I watched it all the time.
Was it really
Yeah,
rated R?
history.
It felt so tame.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had
I'm
blood sprays
surprised
throughout
that
the movie.
I didn't realize it was rated R. Yeah.
So I just got to tell you guys, I just fucked up and accidentally deleted my notes, and then I went into the recently deleted folder and accidentally just deleted my notes for this movie. So I'm
Good job.
flying blind.
Just like me every time.
I thought you were a professional and took notes.
That's what it sounds like.
No, if you listen to the editing, it doesn't sound like that. I just make you look good.
Well, thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. Did you guys know that Rob Schneider wasn't the first choice for
It was Danny DeVito, right?
It was Joe Pesci.
Oh, Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci.
Oh,
Joe
they're the same.
Pesci
That would've been
turned
great.
it down.
I
I
knew it
would've
was a
loved
short,
that.
funny guy. I think I would have bought the whole criminal aspect a little bit more from Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have been as whiny because the whole movie he's like,
Oh my god, Rob Schneider's on this podcast.
and I hated the end of the movie with Snyder. So after everything's done, he gets shot, but then saves the day by like destroying the robot, right? Rob Schneider as Fergie,
Like,
but then like
his brain.
he immediately like as soon as it's all done, Judge Dredd immediately like puts on his coat and just like they're like, we want you to be the new Chief Justice. He's like, I'm a street cop. I'm not gonna do that. You're an idiot. And then the whole time like Joe Fergie is like,
Joe Pesci.
I don't know what I was gonna say. He's like, oh, he gets all the credit. I taught him everything I know, and everything. And then like he kisses the girl. He's like, I would have been a way better kisser. It's like, I don't get it. I don't get why you would have him in this movie.
I liked Rob Schneider.
Yeah,
is it
comedic?
Was
Relief.
his character based on like a comic book character, or was it just made up for the movie?
I honestly don't know. So the last time we covered this, it was just me and Dustin, and Dustin's a huge 2000 comics fan. He has hundreds of these comic books. He has several figurines of Judge Dredd. He's obsessed with Judge Dredd, so he would have been a better person. But
Yeah,
I do know that this movie was originally meant to be dark and satirical, like the comic book. Like the comic book is a satire of America and 1980s England. So it came about. So this is an English comic book. It came about with like Margaret Thatcher, and they were afraid that they were going to start being more like America. So they made this like super fascist satirical comic book. And that's what the director wanted to be, and that was what the script was. But like Double D said, Stallone came in and said he thinks it should be like an action comedy and changed it entirely.
yeah.
Weird.
I was surprised by the
worked.
cast. I mean, I saw the movie, I think, when I was like years and years ago. I hadn't seen it, and I rewatched it like 2 days ago, and I was shocked. You know, like Diane Lane's in it, and Max von Sydow's in it. I forgot about Armand Asante, but I saw him, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember him.
James
It
Remar.
also has James Remar is uncredited. And then I can't remember his name. The guy who plays Herschel in The Walking Dead. He's in Joel, and he's uncredited. I think these people just owed the studio favors because you don't go into this huge, big blockbuster movie and not take a credit unless you're kind of ashamed of it.
Yeah, I mean, I the thing that shocked me actually was the visual effects. Like when the movie first starts, I was like,
they're so
whoa.
good.
I was like, I thought it was pretty good. I was like, this isn't bad for 1995.
I really don't understand why The Fifth Element gets so much. I mean, I understand why The Fifth Element gets praised. Let me, back that up a little bit. I love The Fifth Element, but The Fifth Element looks exactly like this movie.
Yeah,
and The Fifth Element gets so much praise for its special effects. And honestly, this movie looks just as good.
yeah.
I agree.
The set design is really nice. It does has like a Blade Runner-esque kind of feel to it. Like it's very vertical, which I like about their sci-fi, especially in speaking like the remake where it's more like very gritty, the future. This one I like. It's more not whimsical is the right word, but
Whimsical's an okay word.
Yeah, that's what I like about it.
So the thing that's I agree. The thing that's hard for me, obviously covering this critically on a podcast before, is the last time I watched this movie for the podcast, I went in expecting it to be like a god awful piece of shit because this movie gets made fun of on the internet a lot. So the last time I watched, I was pleasantly surprised. Like there were actually elements that I really liked, and I'm sure we'll bring them up when we move into Dredd from 2012. But there's certain aspects that this movie does better for Dredd than the more realistic, arguably better movie from 2012. But there are aspects that this does better, so it's interesting. So this time around, I tried to watch it from a different point of view, and there are a few things that I noticed. And I've seen this movie dozens of times over my life on TV and everything, so maybe there's editing issues. But there are some major things in this viewing that I've never noticed before. But I'll bring it up. I'm sure somebody will bring it up, and then I'm going to jump on.
All right, good. We haven't talked about the progression of the movie at all, so let's go ahead and do that. Alex, take us through a little bit of the movie.
So it starts off with with Rob Schneider actually, which is
Yes.
great. He just gets out of prison, I think Aspen, right, or something like
Yep.
that, and then
Aspirin penal colony.
and
Why are you laughing at the word penal?
I'm tired.
It's just the way you say it, Mike. It's just the way you say it.
Penal.
So sensual.
Penal.
Penal.
Sultry. Yeah, he goes into the block party. I mean, not block party.
The block party.
He gets stuck in a block war. So there's a huge riot going on. He's supposed to go to, what was it, Heavenly
Haven.
Heavenly Haven, and there's this huge riot going on. It's a block war. And there's people shooting across blocks, and it was he gets up to his room and
You heard Pink playing. Let's start a riot. Oh wait, that's not Pink. That's 3 Days Grace.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he gets up to his room, and there's these guys that are about to kill him as soon as he walks in, and he decides to join the block war or die. But
I kind of
shoot
like
out
that
his windows.
interaction though, because he was like, I live here. If I live, I mean, I'll just
I
go to a
think Rob
hotel.
Schneider was a great choice for this role.
I still don't.
I do. I love Rob Schneider in this, man.
I don't think I like Rob Schneider in anything
I loved it.
other than the Waterboy, where he's like, "You can do it."
Oh god. But
So the thing
these
that-
guys just start shooting people from the window down on the ground and across the street. But
Right.
like people are
Well,
just
it's a
getting
block war.
messed up. But
That's what you do.
the thing that got me is when Dredd showed up, he's like, "Those rounds are not lethal from this range."
Yeah, he's like,
They just murdered a bunch of people from there. Like,
well,
what do you mean?
across the street is a lower distance from the floor that they're on to the ground. Double D.
But
But-
they also showed them shooting people.
I mean, it is hitting things. Like I think you see it like ricochet, and I'm like, what if a
No, you
stray
do,
bullet
but he
hits
makes
him?
a
Like,
joke.
he's like,
So this is the thing that's a little weird, and like I get what they're trying to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right. So he says something along the lines of like, "Oh, the blah 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 flechette round has a lethal range of 200 meters. We're at 300 meters. Why are you there?" And then Hershey, played by Diane Lane's like, "Oh, we were waiting for backup," and he's like, "It's here." Now, the difference between lethal and non-lethal doesn't mean those bullets aren't gonna hurt.
Maybe that Kevlar 9 was gonna protect him. Maybe that's what it
They
was.
had the Versace designed
Yeah.
costumes that were going to protect them.
I think the costumes. I think the Judge costumes look great.
I do too.
They look so much like the comic books. I think they did a great job there,
Yeah.
with the exception of Stallone's codpiece. That's a little. They totally zoom in on that for a second. The only costumes that
Gratuitous
look
crotch
weird
shot.
is like the very beginning of the movie when like the shot opens up with like the Aspen Penal Colony, right? And then there's like a guard in like a gray uniform, and that helmet just looks like a non-spray painted plastic
Oh, the
piece of
stormtrooper.
armor. Like
The guys
Yeah,
that
they
look
look
like
the
like
stormtrooper looking dude.
knockoff
Yeah,
stormtroopers.
that costume didn't look so good. Like that looked like they 3D printed something and then just forgot to paint it.
It looked
So
like
other
they
than that,
went
like,
to
the-
like the spirit store and just bought costumes.
Yeah, it looks like a spirit. Like that first guard that you see in the gray costume almost looks like a Fallout cosplay
Yeah,
for like the
Yeah.
power armor.
I see that.
I was surprised actually. The thing that threw me off initially when I was watching it was I'm like, they must have thrown some money at this movie because there's some serious set pieces where you can tell they built
Well,
like
and that
massive
CG,
sets.
no, they put a ton of money into this.
Oh yeah. I mean, they had like 150 people on screen or something at one time, like all in costume, running, in these big elaborate shootout sequences. I was like, wow, this is like, big, because I watched
so
the other one first and then
$70
this.
million
and I was like, oh
budget.
man, this has got like it seems like a bigger budget.
yeah, $70 million budget in '95. That's huge.
Yeah. Wow.
Huge. And this was
Massive.
A lot of them went into making those Lawmaster bikes because they were built from scratch.
yeah, they were
Oh,
real
wow.
bikes.
That's
Yeah.
more money than they spent on The Matrix. I think The Matrix was like a $60 million budget.
Oh, wow.
Well, the difference is with the Matrix, they filmed it in Australia where everything was cheaper.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
like unions are a little bit different. Like if like the Wachowskis and Warner Brothers said if that movie was made in the United States, it would have been like 150 to 200 million dollars in the United States in '99, which is not what we were doing back then. Now, obviously, dropping 250 million dollars on a movie today is the norm,
Yeah,
but back then it wasn't.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's where we meet Hershey, Briscoe, that rookie that gets murdered right away.
Can I say something about Briscoe?
Yeah.
I've never really noticed it until this time around. But he's a rookie, right?
Yep.
They call him rookie a bunch of times, so presumably it's his first year. So now, obviously, I don't know the actual history of this universe, but I can say in the 2012 Dredd, they say that every judge went through an aptitude test at age 9, and then if they're like, okay, you can be a judge, you go through the academy from 9 until you become a judge, right? And then later on in this movie, you see a bunch of like teenagers who are close to graduating. This guy was bald, like receding hairline, bald, and looked old as fuck. Why is he a rookie?
Maybe he just didn't age well.
He's just a flunky.
The stress of the academy.
Maybe he's like Benjamin Button.
Oh, that'd be okay.
He had that early male pattern baldness in his 20s.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very early.
Very early.
Very early.
Yeah, that sucks. That's
But
unfortunate.
you could definitely tell he just wanted to be the next Dredd. He was all about everything.
gung-ho.
They
Let
saw,
me do this.
yeah, they
Let me
saw
do
his
this.
attitude, and you're like, let's just promote this guy. He's
What
fun.
what I thought was funny
Kicking
is,
down doors.
well, that's the thing. What I thought was funny is he's all gung ho, and Diane Lane as Hershey was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to look out for this guy," and she and him and the cadet both go to kick down a door, but Dredd already took out that room by coming through the ceiling and taking out a bunch of
This
dudes.
room has been pacified.
Right, but like, it's not like Dredd's tactics are that good. Like they would have known he was coming through that
Let
hole,
me
and then he
shoot
drops
through the
down,
floor.
and then he's just
Double
standing there,
whammy.
like
Well, they have to yell at him. Dredd!
right. It's like, but if they just shot him, he'd be dead. And then so then the other two cops kick down the door, and like you said, like, oh, the room's been pacified. And then they go to do the exact same thing in the next room, and then the rookie gets blown away, and Diane Lane's like,
Blasted.
no!
What's like with that? It's
And
like
then-
as soon as that happened, he's like, "Oh, cool! I want me some of that. I'm going to next your
Right.
dibs." And Trent's like, "No, rookie."
Right. And so he gets blown away, and Diane Lane is like obviously upset. Like, and then like after the shootout, she's like, "It's my fault. Like I was supposed to keep an eye out on him." And Judge Dredd was like, "Yeah, this happens. Like almost everybody dies." And then Diane Lane is fine. Like they're at the locker room. She's like, "I have friends. I go out every day. I get to party all the time. My life is great," kind of thing. Like she got over that guy dying very, very quick.
Real quick.
Yeah, it was.
But that's the life of a judge.
Yeah, there's this. It was interesting watching this movie because it felt like there were two movies happening. There was like a movie, like almost like kind of like a kid's version of the movie happening, and it was mainly
Right.
with like Sylvester Stallone's dialogue where she's like, "Don't you have any friends?" and he's like, "I did." And I'm like, "You only had one friend in your life?"
I did.
Like
I
the
judged
dialogue
him.
was so almost like the movie's rated R. It's very violent, but it's trying to be for kids, but then it's also trying to be this violent adult movie. And like Sylvester Stallone kept saying that line, like, "I knew you would say that." Like it was like this kind of
Yeah,
line
that's what I was
that
saying.
he
I
kept
had
repeating.
never
Please say that.
noticed that.
Yeah, and I was like, I
I
don't know
never
who this is
noticed that till
for
this
because
time around.
kids aren't going to go into theater if it's rated R. Like they're not going to be allowed in. So if it's going to be
It
R,
was
it should
obviously
be for
made for
adults.
me
I
on
don't know.
VHS.
It was for the TV edit.
Oh, the
I knew you'd say
VHS
I knew you'd say that.
put out for me. It's made
But
for-
and the
knew
thing
you'd
is,
say
like
that.
he says it so often that every character makes fun of it. So Hershey
You
makes
say
fun of
that.
it at some point, and Fergie makes fun of it at some point. Like everybody's like, "You always say that, and you sound like an idiot."
So
That's
scene
the last
where
line of the movie, I
Fergie,
think. It's like at the last
I
line,
knew
as
you'd
he
say that.
smiles, he's like, "I knew you would say that."
Well, yeah. So she kisses him, and then he says something that's like unintelligible, and then she says something back, and then he's like, I knew you'd say that," and then it like goes off with him like almost like not quite a freeze frame, but he's like driving off on his motorcycle smirking.
Yeah.
And then it just is like this music, like this ballad comes on right after. And it's like, that doesn't fit the movie at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie. It's I'm not sure what happened because and then there's the thing that threw me off. I didn't know if I watched like an edited version or something, but when later in the film when Armand Assante activates the clones, I guess of him, they kind of
Yep.
like wake up half alive and they show all of them kind of
Yeah.
popping up and then the whole place just
Yeah.
blows up for no reason. I was like,
Right.
wait, what? Where are the clones? I thought there was going to be a battle between them and
Yeah,
all these
that's not
clones
explained
that
at
were
all.
like grotesque and then nothing happens.
Right.
They were only 60% done.
Well-
They were just scary looking. That's it.
Yeah, I guess that was it. They were just there to like scare everybody, and then they were just gonna blow up the facility.
I also like there's a scene before that where Judge Griffin comes in and he's like, "What DNA did you use?" He's like, "You should be proud of me. I'm gonna be a daddy." And then like it cuts to the girl,
also says,
and
like-
she's like in a robe, and I'm like, "What the fuck? Did I miss a scene?"
That character, I don't know her name, but that Asian scientist lady, her character makes no sense because like
None
when
at
she
all.
first interacts with Rico, played by Armand Asante, she's like angry at him, but then she decides to work for him, and then like when he goes to change the DNA in the Janus project, she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "My DNA is way better," and she's like, "You can't do that," but then it's like she's totally okay, and she goes and fights Hershey and calls her a bitch, and Hershey's like, "Judge bitch." Like it's stupid little puns like that, and they do that throughout the whole movie. Like in that first scene with James Remar at the very beginning, he like after he kills everybody, somehow James Remar hasn't been hit by any of these like double whammy, armor piercing, like all the different things that they do. James Remar is being like held up by his like throat or whatever, and Judge Dredd is like destruction of property, the blah blah, possession of firearms, murder and attempted murder of a judge, and James Remar's like, "Oh, what's that? Life?" And Dredd was like, "Death." Kills him, and he's like, "Court adjourned." Like it's all these stupid puns, and I like if this guy is so by the book, and the only thing he cares about is the law, and he has no friends. Who are these puns for?
For himself. That's what gets him by.
That's the only fun he
Gets him
has.
through the day. The only enjoyment he has are these puns.
Right. So the thing that I found watching this time around, so I was really worried that watching, because the last time I watched it, I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. And I thought this time that my expectations would be too high and I wouldn't enjoy it as much. And that was partially true. Like I wasn't pleasantly surprised by it this time, but I did notice little things like I knew you'd say that. But there was another part that I didn't really notice. And it was kind of like this like whole movie kind of combined in this. So like right after they do the block war, that Chief Justice Fargo was like, "Hey, you did a lot of killing. Good job. Did you need to do as much killing as you needed to do?" And Fred's like, "Yeah, pretty much. I like killing. It's cool. I followed the law, so it's totally fine. You would understand if you weren't in the academy all the time." So the guy's like, "Well, I want you to teach at the academy." And Dredd's like, "I'd be delighted. Firearms or unarmed combat." And then it's like ethics, right? I don't feel like Judge Dredd's unarmed combat in this movie was very good. We saw him fight hand to hand against like Mean Machine, like one of those mutants. And then when he fought Rico, it was literally just like very lame punches and then throws and pushes and jumps. But now I get this is the 90s, but I realized watching this movie that even like Rocky's just boxing. Now obviously those fights are choreographed, but it turns out like behind the scenes a lot of those punches actually landed in Rocky.
Yep.
So I realized that Stallone's never been in a good choreographed fight, and he's a huge action star.
Nah, he just shoots a bunch of people.
Yeah. But
That's what he's about.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. I did just watch Cliffhanger recently. That was like as a kid, that was the movie I watched with Sylvester Stallone a lot. And there's a scene where he's fighting John Lithgow at the end on the helicopter. And I was like, this is really bad. Like the fight scene is like Jonathan Lithgow is kicking his ass. I was like, this is not a good fight sequence.
Well, he's just a rock climber in that movie, isn't he? He's not like a cop
that's
or anything,
true.
is he?
But I don't know. He's Sylvester Stallone. He's like all, he's
still
all
yoked.
roided up.
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing that drives me crazy about this one. Is like this is a big action movie, and obviously it's dated. But like the action, like the big climax when he fights Rico is not very good.
No, and he
It's
does
not a
say
good
like
fight.
a one-liner at the end of that when he like tosses him off. I forget what he says. He says something.
He does a couple. So he goes at one point where they're kind of like fighting. Rico goes, "I was your only friend," and then he goes, "I'll be the judge of that." And then what he ends up doing is the fight goes out of nowhere. So Rico is like kicking his ass, and then somehow he ends up dangling outside of the Statue of Liberty. And Rico's about to shoot Dredd, and he just does this like crazy like pull up and like leaps up, grabs the guy's gun, like throws
Flare.
it down, and then throws Rico over the edge of the building. Like, it was super easy. It's like, why didn't he
really
just do that?
Dumb, because he took the gun, he said flare, and he just shot it
Oh,
behind
that's
him.
right.
And Rico's just looking at it. Just
Right.
looking at the
for
flare.
30 seconds. So then he
Blinded
pulls
by
him
the
over the
flare.
edge. He throws him over the ledge and say, "Justice is served."
Oh,
Once again, a pun that nobody else hears. He just like that one pun where he says something like when he goes, "I was your only friend. I was the only one who cared about you." And he's like, "I'll be the judge of that." Like, that's a bit of a stretch.
Like, I'm pretty sure.
You're not even a judge at this
He
point.
said, no. What he said was, I was the only one that didn't lie to you.
Oh, but still,
I'll be the judge of that.
I'll be the judge of that. That's still a bit
It
of a
doesn't make sense
stretch.
still. Yeah.
It's a bit of a stretch to have, like, you're not even a judge right now. You don't get to say that.
He just throws him off.
I think Armand Assante gave like one of the best performances in the movie.
He's really good. I remember
Yeah.
as a kid always thinking, like, these guys are supposed to be clones. That doesn't make any sense. But the last time I watched it, and this time I'm like, they did a good enough job making them look similar.
Yeah.
The only thing that they didn't do well is there's a point where, and I would love to go back and talk about this scene, but when we first are introduced to Rico and he's in prison, he's got kind of like a veiny, lumpy eye like Stallone does.
Yeah.
And then that's just gone later on in the movie.
I do remember that. Yeah, I remember thinking like, oh, that's weird.
Like, they did some prosthetics to make his face look all Stallone.
Yeah, and then
Yep.
and then later we're like, oh,
And then
let's
he
get
just
rid of that.
didn't.
His skin's all taut. And he's looking hot.
You know, it almost wasn't Armand Assante. He wasn't first choice. It was Christopher Walken.
Oh my god.
What?
Are you
Yeah,
serious?
Christopher Walken
would've-
turned down the role of Rico.
What?
That would
I
would have been a
didn't
lot
know that
better
one. That's
Would have
actually.
been a very, very different movie.
I think it would have been distract. Oh my god, him, like, as much as I like Christopher Walken, having Christopher Walken and Rob Schneider, I don't know if I could have taken this movie seriously.
I don't think anyone could, to be honest with you. But
Yeah,
You know,
I
I
didn't
think
realize
it
there was all the
would've been-
puns.
it would have been more realistic if they kept true to the comics a little bit more and kept the helmet on. And then Armand Assante could have definitely impersonated Sylvester Stallone.
Right, he would have looked a lot more similar. Yeah, that's a big thing. What's weird about this movie, and oh man, I'm going to agree with Neal on something. The beginning of this movie opens up with like comic books just like flashing across the screen, like all in a bunch of different covers, which means Marvel stole the whole cover book thing,
From Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
and then DC stole that from Marvel. Weird. I honestly don't remember. Like, I
Bunch of
remember
thieves.
everybody losing their goddamn mind in like the X-Men and Spider-Man movies, even though they were, different studios. How the Marvel logo had like the comic books like flipping across the screen.
Yeah, I remember
everybody
watching
lost
that
their
in the
mind when that
beginning,
happened.
thinking like, "Oh, is this somehow connected to?" But I was like, "That's not. Marvel doesn't own this property."
No, this is 2000 comics.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Somebody's
Yeah,
got
I
to
was
go
like,
back, or
oh,
maybe
cool.
maybe Marvel hired the same title guy or something to work. on it.
Maybe. It's very plausible.
What did you guys think of, what was his name? The Mean Machine? In the
Mean
the
Machine
cave
was pretty
fight?
I
cool.
like the design.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The only thing is the fight was kind of lame, where it's just another one of these things where it's like he wanted to do some wordplay, and it didn't really work. So he's like fighting Mean Machine. He kills all of the guy's brother. Like he like turns the dial on his head, so he like gets deactivated temporarily. He kills like everybody. He kills all like the guy's family. He kills a bunch of soldiers. Chief Justice Fargo comes and like saves them by killing one guy, and then Mean Machine impales Chief Justice Fargo immediately. And so then he's like fighting, and then he just ends up near this pole, and he goes, "Unlawful use of city's power. How do you plead?" And the guy's like, "Ah!" And he's like, "That's what I thought you'd say."
you say
Or I knew you'd say that. It's like, are you kidding me? You needed a setup to say that again?
I knew you'd say that.
And like that guy's design was incredible. Like once again, these special effects in this movie,
Yeah, for 95,
pretty
that was
great.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
that still looks good for today's standards, I think.
Oh yeah.
For like a weird comic booky thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
It's kind of Mad Maxy.
Yeah, like Robo Max.
Robo Max.
I almost wish like the film, if it had been taken more seriously, like it could have been. I don't know. They could have sold like the drama of the story a little bit more, because I felt like the whole law aspect and his like everything's black and white when it comes to the law like was very heavy handed. And even that sequence when they're like tied up, him and Rob Schneider, and these guys are like cannibals. Like these guys are literally getting ready to eat them, and they show a person on like a roast being cooked, and I'm like, this is dark as shit. Like they're about to eat you alive, and like, and then there's just all this humor on top of this horrible situation, and it felt like jarring. I was like, I don't know,
like, I'm a believer. Yeah, because like Rob Schneider, like when he realizes they're the Angel Gang and they're like Christians, he's like, I'm a believer. My Lord and Savior is Jesus. Like, let me down. And they're like, oh, we got a believer. Let's bring him down. And then Judge Dredd's like, oh, you made a mistake. Your buddies are cannibals. And he's like, oh no, I have gonorrhea and warts and eczema. You don't want to eat me.
Eat Dredd. He works out.
He works out.
Oh man.
See,
this
Rob
time
Schneider
around,
was
I
a great
hated
choice,
Rob Schneider even more than the last time. He drove me crazy. And like when he trips in the little fire scene, like the Super Mario level, when
just yelling Dredd.
Dredd,
I can't get up. Life alert.
Doesn't he do the same thing at that point where he shoots through the floor again?
Oh, he just shoots the floor in front of him when the grating drops down.
So, like Neal was saying, like there's a good movie in here. Now, this movie's entertaining, but it's not good. But there is a good movie in here, and like I remember, even from the last time, that the whole like, hey, there are shades of gray in the law, and like Hershey tries to explain, like, hey, don't you think that Fergie could have been telling the truth, that he was just trying to save himself by hiding in the robot? Like, haven't you heard of extenuating circumstances? He's like, I've heard it all, kind of thing. Just stupid things like that, but they don't really do anything with that. And then eventually, like when they're on the plane, Rob Schneider, when he does the little thing where he holds up his hand to the upper hand part of Stallone's face, he's like, Dredd, and what are you doing here? He's like, I was, sentenced to life because of, a mistake in sentencing. I didn't kill the guy. And he goes, well, so was I. Like, I didn't do it, and here I am. And he goes, the law doesn't make mistakes. Well, then why are you here? So it's heavy-handed, but they never have a moment where Dredd goes, hey, maybe I should interpret the law. Like, they don't have that. Like, so they give you all these examples, but I don't feel like Dredd actually changed as a character at all.
No, he didn't. Yeah. He just reinforced that he was the law.
I am the law.
I am the law. One little thing I did notice was the law that they kept showing was just little pocketbooks, and they were made to look like Bibles.
Yeah, that's the whole point. So, like, in the comic books, it is basically like a religion. That part I do know, and this time around, I actually, like, I don't know how I always missed the scene, but the scene between Judge Griffin and Judge Fargo, when he's like, dude, you could totally save Dredd if you retire, because by law, we have to give you whatever you request as a final order, right? And that's, then Judge Fargo resigns so that way he can go and do the long walk. Like, the whole point is when you're a judge and you're done being a judge, you go out into the wasteland and bring law to the lawless. Like, you're a preacher. You're going on a mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The walk.
The long walk.
I mean, there are elements of the story that I was like, this is actually really cool. Like, the concept itself is really cool, and the visually, I thought they executed it well, but the pacing or something of the film and just the story and the lack of like if the film was a half an hour longer where they fleshed out the characters a little bit more and maybe got Stallone to take it a little more seriously instead of playing it as like a comic book character. I mean, it is based on a comic, but like a cartoon character. He's almost like
right. Well, the thing is, it's
top.
Just Stallone.
Yeah,
he's not playing Judge Dredd. He is playing
Stallone.
Yeah,
Stallone in a Judge Dredd costume.
Right.
And I think that's where the 2012 one diverges quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Didn't he win a Razzie for worst performance or something?
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Like, there's no real difference between his character in this and his character in Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone as Judge Dredd, Demolition Man.
Right. It's basically the same concept. Like, Stallone is in the future fighting crime.
I think in Demolition Man, it was like easier. His performance was easier to swallow because of the setting and the environment, and
Well, the world was weird. How like the Taco Bell won the restaurant
right.
wars, and Sandra Bullock's like, "Hey, you want to have sex with me?" And it's just like VR sex, kind of thing. Like it's the whole thing with like the three seashells for like wiping their ass. And then he starts swearing, so he keeps getting the fines so he can wipe his ass with the receipts from the fines. Like that movie was set up to be more of a comedy, where like you said, this one the tone is. You said it earlier. It's like two movies. It's a rated R, graphic, violent. But then it's also like family friendly. Rob Schneider, like, oh, Dredd, I'm so funny.
Yeah. It's an interesting, interesting film. It's almost like an example for future filmmakers. They can look back and be like, all right, this is what we don't want to go for. this type of like, I mean, you can make a rated R comedy. There's tons of rated R comedies, but.
No, they're not. Name one.
I mean, I don't know about action. Well, no, there's, what do you mean, like The Hangover?
Deadpool?
There's tons.
Deadpool, that Samuel
Deadpool.
Jackson movie.
It's Snakes on a Plane is not a good example.
Snakes on
Alex.
a Plane, yeah. I almost wish they had just made it either they made a decision and went PG-13 or full R and just had it.
They could have gone PG-13 so easy by not just having the blood.
Yeah, just taking out the blood.
And maybe
I
that
don't think they
person
swore much
roasting
in
on
this
the
movie
spike.
either.
Yeah, there wasn't that much swearing. The only other thing I want to bring up, and I definitely brought this up the last time we recorded about this, but the beginning or one of the beginning scenes when Rico escapes, I don't really understand what the warden was thinking, bringing the most dangerous person in the prison a gun. Or not a gun. He doesn't know it's a gun, but a gift. Like, if you don't know what it is, and he's like, what is it?
What? It's
Kinda
not
like,
even a
you shouldn't
great
bring this.
a system in general.
And I don't understand
did
how
a
Rico
voice
got out.
A voice
Like,
kit.
how did Rico get out? Because the guns were armed. It was supposed to shoot anybody that moved. Because the whole point was it was voice activated, and the warden was the only one who could turn it off. But he got shot through the throat. So how was he, like, hiding on top of the door when the other guards came in? I guess maybe the guards turned it off. But how did he get over there before it was turned off?
There was that ledge. He had like hung down, I think, below the.
Yeah, but those machine guns were all over the place.
Yeah, I don't know why
And
they
were
didn't
on,
shoot
like,
him.
turrets that go up and down.
Yeah,
Yeah, that made no sense.
yeah, that was weird.
And the other thing is, why don't they take the DNA off of the database so later on Rico is able to use all the judged weapons because his DNA is in the system? And I guess it's because his DNA is supposed to be the same as Dredd's.
Yeah.
But once Dredd got, like, booted out, why wouldn't they take Dredd's DNA out? Because his DNA was still in the system. Like, he was still able to get into the Hall of Justice. He was still able to use, like, judge weapons. Like, why would you not take their DNA out?
Maybe it takes a while to process that. I don't know. It's a bureaucracy.
All right, let's talk about the other one.
Yes, let's jump over to Dredd from 2012. Alex, you got a synopsis?
Yes. This is from Gary. In a dystopian future Earth, the area between New York and Boston has become a crime-ridden urban mass of 800 million people, known as Mega City. Keeping the peace are combination policemen / judges who make the arrest, determine guilt, and then execute the sentence. Judge Dredd is among the best at what he does, and he is assigned a rookie, Cassandra Anderson, who did not meet the minimum requirements for the job, but who has one talent most do not. She is a mutant with psychic abilities.
Ooh.
They soon find themselves inside Peach Trees, a 200-story building that houses, among many other, Mama, a gangster who produces the drug of choice in Mega City, Slow-Mo. Mama shuts down the building, determined that Dredd and Anderson will never see the light of day. That's from Gary.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. I actually like this movie a lot. It is very different from the old.
It's one of my
Judge Dredd.
favorite movies.
A lot of people, when this came out, said it was just a
Rip off of the raid.
I hate
Raid
that.
with guns.
I hate that because I've been following Dredd for like before when it was like out at that time, a long time. Like I was a huge Alex Garland fan, and when I saw that, like people,
Alex Garland's great.
were like, oh, it's like great. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This movie was in production for so long.
Yeah, it was in production hell for a long time. Well, and it just came out in the last year that. So Alex Garland wrote and directed Ex Machina, which is an incredible film. He wrote and directed Annihilation, which is an incredible film. He wrote this one. He did the screenplay, but Carl Urban in the last year has said that the director, Pete Travis, really wasn't the director. He was there, but didn't understand the source material. So basically every day he would have Alex Garland, the writer, because you always have the writer on set, come and explain what was going on the page, and then ultimately directed. So Carl Urban, who still loves the character and has been trying to get a sequel made since 2012, is now going to appear in a Judge Dredd TV show. It's just called Mega City 1. It's not going to actually be about Judge Dredd, but he's going to come and go as Dredd.
Wow.
He was like, Alex Garland really directed this movie. He's never going to get credit for it, but he directed it. And like, it was pretty controversial that he did that because, you know, it's not normally something you do on set. Like, it happens here and there. Like, a lot of people say that Kurt Russell ultimately directed Tombstone because like the director just like left apparently halfway through filming. So Kurt Russell went and just finished the movie unofficially. So it happens from time to time. And you can definitely tell like Alex Garland has a definitive style and visual thing. Like, I don't know how much, you know, input he had on the visual stuff, but obviously the way he wrote the screenplay was designed to have some very pretty shots, and this movie's like
so
I tried to
visually amazing.
Yeah.
Like I tried to watch this movie from a different point of view again because I've obviously talked about it, and I've always known that this movie was pretty, but there's this time around like there's different shots that I didn't notice. Like there's a POV shot. The whole reason why they end up going to the block that they went to, Peach Trees, is because Mama's gang killed these 3 guys who were like trying to
off this 200th floor.
Right, so they skin them and throw them off, but like they give them the slow-mo drug that makes them perceive time at 1%, so that fall would seem longer. But there's this like shot that switches to POV, so like you see the camera spin around, and then you just see a hand come into frame, put the slow-mo thing, spray it. You see a little bit of spray and shiny, and then you see like a little jerk, and it looks over the balcony, and then it's thrown over the balcony. Like there's this POV shot. And it's an incredible shot, and I've never noticed it before. And I've watched this movie easily 12 to 15 times.
So I watched this movie in theaters in 3D. And,
Me too.
And that's where I noticed all these cool shots. There were a few of those POV shots, but the 3D in that was amazing.
Yeah, this was one of the rare movies where 3D really did make a big difference. And this movie has always had a dear place in my heart because most people didn't even know this movie was coming out. But I went and saw this movie with some friends. This was like one of the last things I did with my friends before I moved from the Sacramento area to San Francisco area. And like I stayed out super late, literally just a few days before I moved to watch this movie with them. And oh man, it's such a good movie. Like I'm going to try to like take a step back as we talk about this one because it's so easy for me just to gush about this movie.
Carl Urban did great as Dredd. I
love
like
Carl
the
Urban.
casting as Dredd, but he did it well.
Yeah. I thought
Carl
he was
Urban, I
great.
think, is one of the most underrated actors out there. Like if he's
I
in
agree.
something, I know I'm gonna like at least his role. Like he's great in Red, he's great in Pathfinder, he's great in this, he's great in
Chronicles
Lord
of
the Rings,
Riddick. He's just amazing.
Chronicles of Riddick.
I
Yeah,
actually
he's
I
great.
didn't
His
like
best
him
role.
in that Dune movie. I thought his particular
I-
character I thought was the most interesting in that movie.
I actually really like that Dune movie. And they did a remake, a direct-to-DVD remake that I think is out already, and I kind of want to cover it on this podcast just so I can watch that movie because I love that movie.
Yeah.
Dude.
That first person shot, a lot of people shit on that thing where it's like 7 minutes of like first person, like the video game.
Yeah.
Video game.
I fucking think it's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
I like it. Well, because I love video games.
I didn't know that, Double D. I didn't know
Yeah,
you liked video
I
games.
know. You don't know a lot about me, Mike.
I did read somewhere that after I watched the movie, I was like looking up all this trivia about Dredd, and I read that it was Alex. I want to say it was Alex Garland and someone else. I can't remember who the other person was, but they had spent like 3 years working out those slow mo shots. They were kind of like
You can
developing
tell.
that
They
shot
were
because they had
amazing.
planned to have that as like a main feature in the story. But they were actually working on like the tech to kind of get that kind of like LSD trip looking, shot.
Yeah, dude, it works so well, and it's super stylized with the whole like glittery and rainbow colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it works.
So if you
well.
took the slow mo and were thrown off the 200th floor, wouldn't that just take all the fear out of it? Like you're just falling slowly.
Well, no,
feel
but
like
you're
gonna-
ultimately gonna die, and so you've got instead of 5 to 7 seconds of falling, it feels like you're falling for 10-15 minutes, and it's like 10-15 minutes of knowing you're gonna die, and your body's still producing that adrenaline. Like, so you're getting that fear spread out over 15 minutes, and no, that would be terrifying.
I don't know. I feel like at some point
It-
you're
it-
just over
I mean,
it.
like I think
You're
because
like,
like
this
it
might
looked
as well
like at
happen.
some point for her, she looked like it looked serene, you know.
Yeah,
Right. The one thing that I thought was going to happen, and even though I've seen this movie so many times, and I was really busy this weekend, I almost pulled a first for the podcast. I almost didn't watch this movie just because I've seen it so many times. I could talk about it, but I found the time to watch it.
Thank you, Mike.
Every
Appreciate
time I
that.
watch this movie, I know it's obviously not going to change, but I always think that like one of two things is going to happen. Dredd, it like goes into a room and he sees like 100 guys, and he's like, "There's no way I can kill 100 guys." So he takes slow-mo to slow down his perception, and then just whoops all kinds of ass, and then like takes the drug back to Central, the Hall of Justice, and is like, because this is like a fascist regime, like all the great fascists used methamphetamines. Like Hitler had used methamphetamines, and he actually towards the end of the war started giving methamphetamines to those soldiers to try to give them an edge. A lot of people think that Trump actually uses some form of amphetamine. So all the great fascists use methamphetamines and drugs and everything. So I thought, it would be something that I could feel like this world could use, because like these judges in the comic books, I know they only sleep for like 1 hour. So when they're done with their shift, they go to like a chamber where they like go to sleep for an hour, but it makes it like it's the equivalent of a full night's sleep, and then they just go back out and do it again. So I feel like that's something that this like crazy organization would use, is this slow-mo to like be like a performance enhancer for the cops.
Yeah.
Or what I thought could have happened was kind of like what he ultimately did. He gave Mama slow-mo before throwing her over the edge, and same thing, Mama gave slow-mo to the guys that she killed before throwing them over the edge. I thought that maybe they would have given Dredd some slow-mo, like maybe they capture him, give him some slow-mo, and then they don't anticipate him being such a good cop and such a professional and so devoted to the law that it actually increases his focus, and then he just whoops all kinds of ass. Like it backfires on them, and he kills hella people because it gives him more time for his tactical brain to make tactics for the room. So I think that was a missed opportunity. I would have
Mike.
added something like
Sorry,
that.
he just killed a bunch of people regularly.
Yeah. But think of if he did it slowly.
It's funny, like when
I like this movie a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, when I watched it, I guess like shortly after it came out, I think I saw it on video. I missed it in theaters. I didn't even know it existed until I think I saw it available on video, and I was like, oh, I should watch this.
Yeah, most people didn't know this movie was a thing until it was on like VHS or VHS.
VHS.
Like DVD or Blu-ray, so. It's not that old.
I'm a
It's
product of the 90s,
the last
okay?
VHS. It's called Dredd.
I might actually have a copy of Judge Dredd on VHS. Actually, I have to look at my old collection. But
Right.
I'll say, like, when I got to the end of the movie, the thing that really blew me away was like this whole movie, in a sense, is like a day in the life of a judge.
That's exactly what
And
it
I was
is.
like, that
Yep.
concept didn't even hit me until the fun, like the end of the movie, where he's like, he walks out and they open up the blast doors or whatever, and his boss shows up and he's like, so did she complete her assessment? And I was like, oh shit, the assessment, I like forgot all about that.
right.
And he's like, she
He's like-
passed or whatever,
and
and
he's just
she
like-
like storms off.
Yeah, he's just like, she's a pass.
Yeah, and I was like, this is actually a really cool concept. This is like, it's not this grand,
It's
like
a really good
Judge
movie.
Dredd, the old 95 one, is like this grand story that affects like the whole city. And this is just
Yeah.
kind of like this isolated
whole-
thing, like a day in the life of a judge.
Just-
Yeah,
a
he's
day,
just
exactly.
a really good cop. Like he's the best cop, but he doesn't think of himself as any better or any more important than just being a cop.
Yeah.
Dredd.
And what I like about it, and this time I didn't really, I tried to watch it more critically. There's a point where he's asking Anderson, like, why she's doing it. And he goes, like, when they're in Peachtree's, and he's like, you want to help a place like Peachtree's? And she's like, I grew up in a place like Peachtree's, and now I'm a judge. Like, yes, I do think I can make a difference. And he's like, admirable. But, like, earlier in the movie, like, just 10 minutes prior, when he's, like, first gets the assignment to take her under his wing, he's telling her, like, there's 1 in 5 judges don't survive their first day. There's over 17,000 crimes a minute or something like, something like 17,000 crimes a day, major crimes. They can only make it to like 6%. So they get to like less than 1,000 of these crimes. And it's just like, it's bleak.
Yeah.
They don't make a difference. They really don't, but they still do it. And it is just a day of them doing the best they can.
Yeah, and I actually like the her being telepathic. I thought that added and the way they handled it, I thought was really, really well done. And her kind of like nuanced performance of like sensing things and saying things before, Dredd would say it or whatever. It was kind of like they got through that in the beginning, and then later on, you kind of expected her to operate that way.
Well, and it made more sense. So in this version, it was like there was like nuclear war, and that made the wasteland, what it is. Where in the original one, like it has like an opening scrawl, and it's like, oh, global warming made the earth poisonous and everything like that. So. And so it didn't really make sense where you had like the Angel Clan in the original one, which the Angel Clan is in the comic books, but you have like the one guy who's got all the deformed face, and then you have like Mean Machine. That didn't really make sense. Where in this one, they specifically mentioned that her building that she grew up in was like 10 feet away from the radiation wall.
Oh,
and so that's why she got her powers and everything. So, it makes more sense to have these, like, mutants in this world, even though this world is much more tame. Like, there are no flying cars or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's less... It's still very, very, Blade Runner, just not with flying cars. Like, it's still that dark kind of noir, kind of gritty film.
It doesn't have, like, that, like... Because, like, Blade Runner is very, like, influenced with, like, Hong Kong, like, the neon lights and stuff like that. The only neon lights is a fucking judge badge that's in the beginning.
Right.
But it's still very, like, bleak and grimy for...
More like RoboCop-esque.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think... something that I thought was really funny at the beginning of the movie. So the movie opens up with Carl Urban, like, Mega City 1, The Wasteland, judges kind of thing. And then it just goes to him, like, riding his motorcycle, chasing these bad guys down. And one of the things I thought was really funny is these bad guys are, like, they're dodging and weaving. Presumably they just committed a crime and they're trying to get away from wherever they were. And he's driving on his motorcycle and he says something along the lines of, like, suspects driving erratic. They're under the influence of narcotics. Like, how does he know they're under narcotics just because they're driving crazy?
He can see him doing the slow-mo.
Maybe.
They're so slow.
I thought that scene was interesting because he doesn't like attack them in a lethal way until they hit that the innocent bystander.
Hit that guy. And he's like, I'm taking him down.
Gruesome.
And then
I was like, oh my god.
The whole movie is gruesome.
Yeah.
I mean, when those guys are all doing slow-mo in that one room and they kick in the door and then you see the bullets like tearing through the guy's cheek, and I was like, oh my god, this is a lot.
Or even when Mama finally gets killed and you see her, like, obviously they did like a thing where it's like the camera under a piece of glass and then like something gets smushed.
Yeah.
But you see her face like hit the ground and you see her face just flatten. Or even when the three bodies drop, like you see them and it's like thump, thump, thump and everything, and you just see them smush and their brains fly out the top of their heads. Like, it isn't a nice movie.
Oh, it's very violent.
This one is not family friendly.
No.
So
they went the hard
one of the
R.
other things, one of the other things I thought was funny, and still in that intro scene, they go and, the guy that survives the van flipping somehow goes into a mall and starts, like, shooting people up and gets a hostage. I still think that Carl Urban's Dredd shooting the flare, the hot shot into the guy's mouth was super risky. Because he still could have
pulled the trigger.
He still could have pulled the trigger.
Which he most likely would have.
Right. So I still think that was a little lame. But right after he does that and it starts panning out and you see, like, the robots cleaning up all the blood, he says something along the lines of, like, I have multiple wounded and multiple bodies for recyc. Now, recyc literally means they, like, grind up the people's bodies, get the protein out for food. But I've always heard that, but I figured, like, recyc just short for recycle. Well, I had the subtitles on this time, and it spells it R-S-Y-K, and I thought that was really interesting.
That's like that those moments is good. It's like it's a good introduction to the gun because we get to see, like, oh, it has voice command, and that's how he's like, so he does that hot shot moment.
I did like that he ran out of ammo.
Yeah, and the gun's a little bit different in this one. So in the original Judge Dredd with Stallone, each bullet had every type of ammo in it. Where in this one, each I don't know. The physics of it doesn't make sense. Like I don't
think it's the
understand
same
how the
Wouldn't
space.
fit in there. Yeah.
concept,
No, because
right?
he goes and said in this one, like he has different amounts of each one. Because at the end, when he's fighting other judges,
He's cycling through them.
he's cycling through. He's like grenade, empty, armor piercing, empty, high velocity, empty. So that didn't really make a ton of sense to me.
Maybe they're really small bullets.
Oh,
That's possible. That I was actually I like the gun. I mean, so I watched these
Oh,
out of
it's cool.
sequence. I watched Dredd first, and then Judge Dredd, and
no, that's fine.
yeah, and I remember thinking like I like the way the gun was portrayed a lot more in Dredd than and Judge Dredd, even though they try to do the same
Right.
thing. But yeah, I also wondered the same thing. I'm like, where is all this ammunition coming from? Like, I mean, they show him
Right.
taking the clips out when he takes out that one judge at the
Yeah, he
end,
does
and he
reload.
like takes his clips because he can't take his gun.
Yeah, because it's linked to his DNA.
The other thing I thought was interesting is the psychic when she is
Oh,
like gets
they
in
did
the
such
mind.
a great job with that.
Did you know that whole scene where she like gets in the mind of the guy?
Yeah.
Who they're
We just watched this movie, Neil.
I was like, this scene is so crazy because like I would think that she would use that the whole movie, but she just does it like the one time. I don't know if it's like taxing for her or
For the
something, but
interrogation
Well,
type thing.
It could be. I think that it was more of like an interrogation thing because she still uses her abilities throughout. Because there's a point where they're about to get ambushed, and she like puts her hand up against the door, and then figures out the woman's name on the other side,
yeah,
and says the woman's name, and she lets them in. She's like, she'll help us, and then the woman closes the door, and she's like, I'm gonna help you get off the floor just because I want you to get off my floor.
Yeah.
And she tells her like, hey, the elevator actually works, even though they say it doesn't. Just
but they
get the
even
fuck
they
off
even
my
have
floor
that scene
kind of
where
thing.
she sees like her husband, and it's the chick or it's the guy that she had just shot in the face or whatever, like moments
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
And I think that's a great callback because this is her first day, and throughout the movie, like when they're about to go, like do the I don't know what it's actually called when like cops like blow a door and then like go into a
yeah.
room,
I don't know.
but
the official term.
she's
Breach and
really
enter.
nervous. Breach and enter. Thank
Yeah.
you, Double D, because you play video games.
Yep, exactly.
She's very nervous, and Dredd's like, "Hey, are you ready for this?" And she's like, "I'm good. It's just nerves." He goes, "Where's your helmet?" That kind of thing. And then like there's a point where she hesitates killing that dude, and then there's a point where after they killed everybody in that room, Dredd's like, "Rookie, the sentencing," and she says the sentencing, and he goes, "Not me, Central." Like she's visibly shaken and not like this is her first day. Like this is a crazy first day. Like no other judge has had this as their first day.
But how many judges get to first day with Dredd?
I don't know. I am
That's-
curious as to how many he's trained, and it's like because they say 1 in 5, and he's really dark because there's a point where he goes off on his own, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go off on my own. Like stay here and hang out, and if anybody does come and they you don't want to be taken alive,"
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is super dark.
Oh God.
I really liked another thing with the psychic scene that since we're talking about her right now is when they're in the elevator with that guy who like works for Mama. Like she says, "Sir," and Dredd's like, "What?" And she goes, he wants to make a play for your gun," and Dredd's just like, "Yup." And then he goes, and then she's like, "Sir?" He's like, "What?" He changed his mind, and he goes, "Yup." It's so good.
Yeah.
It is great.
I like that
And,
there's
like,
like
the
little
action is
moments of
so
like
good.
humor sprinkled into the movie. Like it's
But
not,
it's- And it's very low key. It's not like stupid puns and
Hey,
just
nothing stupid about puns.
I knew you'd say that.
right. No, don't get me wrong. I love puns. People who've listened to the podcast, I have made my fair share of puns, especially on Ruin My Childhood because it drives Katrina crazy. But like to write a movie just to have puns when it's supposed to be a serious action movie is dumb. But like the action in this movie is so good. Like that point where they're like going up the stairs to get to the med
with the
bay.
gas.
It's just so tactical. He's like, "Don't waste your ammo. Like, only fire if you know you're in a hit." And it's just like headshot, 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 and it's super tactical.
Yeah.
The scene where he's like fighting in the drug lab, so good. And then when he has to fight, he fights like 3 judges, which was cool. Like,
Yeah.
oh, God, this movie's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the where Anderson had to shoot the other judge, I thought that would be more intense. But
No,
Well, no,
it's
'cause
so
she's a
great.
psychic.
Because like you expect this
great.
like fight scene. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna play her," and stuff like that. And it's like,
Nope.
psychic, bah, 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 bah.
Yeah, she just knows that like she's not what she seems to be. Like, and it exactly what Alex just said. Like, you expect a big fight scene, and then you don't get one. You're like, but you don't feel cheated because you're like, oh, it paid
That
off.
makes
She
sense.
has powers.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you expect it, but yeah, I don't feel like I lost anything because she was really cool, and I loved her character's like her sense of agency, where she got captured. She had her gun taken. Now that guy ended up getting his own arm blown off by using the gun. But she ends up letting Domhnall Gleeson go, the guy who's like the hacker dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dredd's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I already failed. I was captured. My gun was taken. But it's still you're
I'm
giving
still
me
a
a
judge."
day. I'm still a judge until the end of the day, and I'm letting him go." And he kind of like, okay. So I like in this version.
Didn't he grunt? He's like,
He did, but I think it was like a grunt of like acceptance, like
yeah,
fuck it,
like agreement.
yeah, and everything. So I do like that this guy is very.
Wait. Can I hear your agreement grunt, please? How about you, Alex? Neal? Great.
You
They
know,
all sound the
it's
same way.
interesting.
You can do it.
I didn't notice this when I watched the film, but I was looking over some trivia afterwards, and there's that scene where she's interrogating the guy, where she's like trying to find out why, who's mama, and all that stuff. And there's a scene where he has her gun and he shoots her with it, and it doesn't kill her, right? And then later in the movie, he takes her gun, like she laid that idea in his mind that he should pick up the gun, like.
Damn, Neil, you just blew this thing wide open. I've never noticed
Yeah,
that.
I was like,
Inception.
that's crazy. Like, it's this little subtle moment where, like, you know, she's in his mind making him pick up her gun and shoot, even though she knew that if he touched her gun, it'd blow his hand off or whatever. It'd self-detonate.
That's rad. I never thought of that.
I thought that was interesting.
Neil, I knew there was a reason I brought you onto the podcast.
These movies are
That
riddled with
one
secrets,
little
man.
tidbit.
There's these directors
The
like
gun
hiding
exploded,
stuff.
right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if
rad.
it explodes or just like
It looked
Sends
like it
one around
exploded.
backwards.
That's why
or
she
something, 'cause
doesn't
she had
use
the-
it again.
Oh, okay. But man, that Neil, just that one thing was enough to bring you on. Why don't you
You're
just sign
welcome.
off now? You're not gonna bring anything else better than that.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, that one little thing you did was more than Diego or Nick ever did when they showed up.
I'll be sure to let them know.
Well, hopefully they listen.
I'm sure there's more
So, I'm
secrets
just gonna
hidden in this
say-
movie. It's just
Oh,
it's such a
yeah, there
well
are.
done movie. I mean, it's the pacing of the movie is
It's
great.
paced
The
incredibly.
performances are great. I love that he never takes his helmet off, like in Judge Dredd.
Right.
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone has his helmet off
because
like 5 minutes into the movie, and it's off like
It's
the
an
whole
ego.
movie.
It's an ego vanity thing. Like Carl Urban is not that big of an actor
Yeah.
that he has that ego where he has to do it. And you know, in this day and age,
Well,
and
it's
I'm
it's
gonna
not
repeat
only
myself.
that too. Like it's
That's
no
only
no no
that.
because like if you think about it,
Don't contradict me.
it's hard. It had the Spider-Man syndrome where like essentially it becomes like two talking action figures where like you just like mask and
Right.
mask. It's hard for movies, and I could also see in Dredd, like if they had multiple Dredds, they had to distinguish them somehow. So like one had like a slash on his badge and stuff like that. It makes it a little harder for like keeping track, and I understand like that's why like they removed her helmet and
I
stuff
can get
like
that to an extent. Well, I can get that to an extent. No, they removed her helmet because it interfered with her psychic
That's
abilities.
what
Pay
they
attention to the
say,
movie.
but for production reasons.
I think that I would have been able to tell the difference between her and Carl Urban if they were both wearing helmets.
I don't think you
saying.
could, man.
They both have magnificent chins, so
It's like Batman. It's like that scene in The Dark Knight where they like cover Harvey Dent's face and like, could you be Batman? Kind of thing. Oh, I can only see his chin. I don't know who it is. But no, I think vanity definitely does come to a place because in Judge Dredd, he only wore the helmet in that opening scene, and then he puts on the helmet for the closing scene. Like, if you totaled how much screen time he had while wearing the helmet, like actual seconds on frame, like on film, I'd say it's probably less than 60 seconds of Dredd with the mask or the helmet on in the original one. Where this one, it's the entire movie, and like in the comic books, you never see his face. There's one point where he takes off the helmet,
But it's censored.
but it's censored, and there's another point where he takes it off, but he'd just got plastic surgery to go like undercover, so it's not really his face. So I like it. It's like the whole thing of like Wilson in Home Improvement.
He's like Master Chief.
Oh.
Master Chief.
Yes.
I don't think Double D knows who Master Chief is. He doesn't play video games.
Yeah, I don't have statues of Master Chief in my home. That's not a thing.
God, there's just
What
so
else
many
do we like
good
about
things.
this movie?
The machine
Alex,
gun scene.
Stop talking.
Oh.
Alex, tell me something you liked about it.
Definitely the fight scene with the Dredds, because like you get to see how resourceful Judge Dredd is.
Oh my god. He fucking puts the gun in his throat.
Yeah.
That was gnarly.
Choke on this.
Just brings it down.
Oh, I guess there is a pun in this one.
Neal, anything you wanted to bring up? Your favorite scene or anything?
I mean, I think the slow-mo scenes in general, like the scene in the beginning when he's chasing the guys in the van, I thought that scene was cool, and then later on when they bust into that room, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, just like when the first time I saw the movie, I mean, I rewatched it 2 days ago, but the first time I saw it, that and the violence, I think, is what floored me, and the pacing. And it's almost like things happen in the movie that you kind of your Hollywood has taught you that action films should go a certain way, and I feel like this movie like goes in different ways slightly, so it throws you off. Like you kind of trying to predict. Sometimes you try to predict how a movie's going to go. Like,
yeah.
I felt like with the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, this movie's different. Like this is not going the way I thought it was going to go. Even when Dredd gets shot. And he gets the armor piercing bullet goes through the brick wall and like blows a hole in his back or whatever, and I'm just like, and you're thinking like, well, the first time I saw it I was like, is he like dead? And then he's like, wait, and I was like, wait, he's a bitch now? Like he's like pleading for his life.
He's a bitch. Wait, shot.
Really? That's all you're gonna say?
Yeah, and then the guy goes on that rant for like 10 minutes, and then he gets blown away. I was like, oh, that was good. He's like, wait
for what? I'm gonna change my mind.
Wait.
I loved it. I loved the whole movie.
Good.
I thought it was great. I mean, I wish it had made more money. I mean, I hope they come out with a sequel because I think it was.
Yeah, they're just doing the
looking forward
TV
to it.
show.
Oh, okay.
It's just gonna be a TV show. No number two.
No, he's been trying. Like he really wanted to get it done as even like a Netflix movie or Amazon movie, but it's not gonna happen.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
man.
this movie just
But
didn't
it's so
do
great.
enough.
Yeah.
They didn't advert. I didn't even see a
I thought
trailer for this movie before
it
I
did
saw.
well in home video, but not.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a cult
It did
classic.
great on Netflix, right?
Yeah, when it was on Netflix, it did really well. The thing that's weird is, so Movies Anywhere is a thing where, obviously you can buy a movie on iTunes, and it works on Amazon, and it works on Vudu, and it works on, a bunch of different things. Lionsgate is one of the last, 3 studios that isn't part of Movies Anywhere, and that's probably hurting them too, that, you can't buy this movie and then watch it on any platform or any device in, this digital world streaming thing. So, that's weird, but obviously it made its money back eventually.
Yeah.
But it didn't do enough in theaters to justify. But I also don't think they advertised for it, because I don't remember seeing a trailer for this movie at all.
I didn't see a
I think there were
trailer.
trailers on YouTube, but those are the only ones I've seen.
Yeah.
I'll say I love
good
the
movie.
the location. I think they filmed most of it in South Africa, correct? Or is that right? I think
Yeah.
that's
It's
Could be.
Yeah.
I don't
think
know.
it was,
I don't know where they filmed it. I mean, I don't know if these were shot in just these concrete complexes or something, or
Johannesburg.
if they were sound stages. But it looked great.
If I remember correctly, it was Johannesburg.
Johannesburg? Yeah.
Johannesburg.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like about this movie, and we kind of brought it up at the beginning, but the stakes with the innocents, so many innocent people die in this movie. So all those people at the mall, the guy who got run over on the freeway.
The fucking miniguns.
When they're doing the 3
Oh my
miniguns, all those people
They just
are getting
destroyed
killed.
that level.
That vagrant, that scene is
Oh,
incredible.
the
So when
blast
they're
door?
when they're going into peach trees, Anderson just goes to walk in, and Dredd's like, "Hey, rookie, dumbass, you fucking missed something." And she's like, "Oh, my bad. Oh, a vagrant? That's 6 weeks in the ISO cubes, but we should prioritize the murder." And he's like, "Right." And then Dredd looks back at the vagrant, and he's like, "Don't be here when we get back." And then when they come back, when they go to leave with the criminal guy, he's like, "Hey, I thought I told you to leave." Plunk. The door just
Why did that
drops on
blast
him.
door come down so quick?
I don't
Stay
know.
clear of the blast doors. Clack.
So we can get that wet sound, the clack smush.
That just proved that the judge, our Dredd was right. I actually like that scene when Mama gets on the intercom. That's like talking to the entire complex. Which how many 75,000 people or something lived in that thing?
Something crazy like that,
number. And she's like, "There's 2 judges here. Like I want them dead." And then they're just standing there in like this courtyard with like hundreds of people, and I'm like, dude, like that would scare me if somebody did some shit like that. You know, you're trapped in this facility and someone just announced
but
that
he
they want you
flips it
dead.
around and does it later. So there's a point later on where he gets on the phone and he like puts his like helmet or something up on
This is where he does the I am the law.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like he gets on the thing, he's like
Mama's
the law. I am the law. I'm gonna come up there and kill y'all.
Wait, what?
I don't think that was a lie, but I'll go with it.
But yeah, I mean, he flips it and does the same thing and does the psychological warfare, and they do the thing. What do we do? They do the same thing that they did in Batman Begins. They're like, what do we do? The same thing you do anytime an intruder comes. You call the police.
Right. Yeah, that was a nice twist when I saw it the first time. I was like, oh shit. I was like,
yeah, I wonder how those judges that got stuck outside felt.
right.
Well, they felt dead.
Oh, they
felt dead.
just got
Double
in.
D.
Okay.
The bad judges killed them.
I don't think they killed though.
No,
Yes,
they
they
just
did.
walked in and
They're like,
closed the
you
blast
got
door.
you're dismissed.
Oh,
They're
no,
like, you're
yeah.
relieved.
Oh no,
Yeah.
he kills the who does one of the judges kill? Does he kill like the doctor?
Yeah, he kills the
Yeah.
medics.
Yeah.
He's
Like,
like, I can
that's what it is,
testify.
okay.
on the ground
Yeah.
floor.
Yeah,
Bam.
That's right. Well, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Great movie. It was, like you guys said, it paced very well. It just flew by though. I wish there was so much more of it.
I think it's the same runtime as Judge Dredd.
96 minutes. Yeah, exactly the same
Yeah.
runtime.
I mean,
Kinda
it's a significantly simplified
Simplified.
plot.
Yeah.
It's basically the raid.
God damn it.
With guns.
The raid had guns at the beginning, so the raid went
More
guns, machete, hand to hand,
fists, knuckles, elbows,
knees, head, shoulders, knees and toes.
Oh man! Any other standout points in this movie, guys?
No, it's great. Just go watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys gotta watch this movie if you've never seen it before. All right, I guess that's wrap it up for us here.
I concur.
I think it's fair to say what we all agree on this, whether this should have been remade or not.
I think it should have been. It's a great movie. It's exactly what a remake should be.
I hate to say it, but I agree with Michael. This was a fantastic remake.
I
Alex?
also have to regrettably agree with Michael.
What's funny is you say that, but most of the time we agree on these. There have only been a couple. Like I don't remember what it was.
We don't hate to say it.
But I'm always right. What was it? A couple episodes back, I kept arguing with you guys, and you're like, "Oh, okay, you're right. Like it is a better movie," because you tried to say like one of the movies wasn't as good.
Yeah, it was the Jungle Book one, and we were just saying that it didn't. I don't. But
Yeah. Well, anyway,
we don't
I'm
like to
always
agree
right.
with you.
Neal, what do
I
you think?
also agree. I don't regret agreeing.
Well,
I
thanks,
definitely
Neal.
agree. It's a superior. I think it's a superior film. It's and it captures, I think, the content of the comic book. Even though I haven't, I've only been exposed to a little bit of the comic book. I feel like it captures that world better, the seriousness of the world.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel as.
I really hope we get to see Judge Death at some point.
Yeah.
Well, with the fact that there's mutants and stuff in this one,
It
like
can
Judge
happen, yeah,
Death
for sure.
could make sense in this.
Well, I think it was
version.
actually
Like,
the Alex Garland said he had like a planned trilogy, and Judge Dredd was gonna make his appearance in the third one.
That's cray. Maybe we'll get him in Mega City 1, the TV show.
I hope so.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Cool. Well, I think that Neal has to get out of here because he's got his podcast to record.
Yes.
Coming
Wanna
up,
put your
right?
plug in here, Neil.
I got Nick
Tell us
breathing
where
down my neck.
Where you're at, where we can listen to you. Where can we listen to you, Neil?
You can find us on Facebook, Get to the Movies, Get to the Podcast, and on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on our website, gettothemovieswiththenumber2.com. Come check us out. Just
And
We have recorded a lot of episodes, covered a lot of content.
Yeah, you guys are hundreds of episodes in, right? A little, like 100 and something.
Did we cross over 100 episodes? I don't know.
Wasn't I on your 100th episode?
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. What am I talking about? Oh my God. This is how, out of the loop I am. Diego and Nick are on top of all this stuff. Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're over 100 episodes, and we're coming on I think we're coming up to the 2-year mark.
That's awesome.
No, you guys would have hit your 2-year mark by the time this episode airs, because you guys come out on Tuesdays, and we initially came out on Wednesdays. So like you guys came out like a day or two before us.
That's so funny.
Like we started at like the exact same time, like within a week of each other. Our first episodes aired. So
yeah,
congrats on 2 years. Congrats on your 100+ episodes.
thank you.
Tell the guys that tell Nick to shut up, and tell Diego, as like I said in the 100th episode, he's great.
Cool. I will. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for popping on, man.
I'd love to come back on in the future at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Nick on there twice. Pretty sure I haven't actually talked dates with Diego, but we would love to have him come on our next episode on the fly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
awesome.
Cool. Right. Double D, do you want to wrap up the show, or you want me to do it?
You do it, Mike.
All right.
You're so good at it.
Oh, thank you, buddy. Thanks for listening to Remake Rewind. You can check out everything that's Remake Rewind related and MDXpods related at MDXpods.com on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I actually just kind of redid the Instagram. I made like a new landing page that has quick links for Remake Rewind for YouTube, Google Play, Apple Music, the web, Stitcher, and the same thing for Ruin My Childhood. So it's way easier than ever to find all of our stuff. If you just go to Instagram, there's one link in our bio, and it will bring you to every single platform we have for our content. So it's super easy. Check out Ruin My Childhood. It's a really great podcast with me and Katrina. Check out Get to the Podcast. That's Get to the Podcast with the number 2. They're on all the different platforms. I think they're even on Stitcher, which is one better than us. And they're a great podcast, so go check them out. And if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/MDXpods and chuck in $1 or $2. It helps us out a lot. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
I knew you'd say that.
No, you.
Thanks for listening, guys.
All right, bye.
Later.